Hello, welcome back to See What Sticks. I'm Russell.
I'm Ariana.
I'm Max.
I'm Olivia.
And Vinay.
How is everyone doing?
Great. Third Midori sour, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. That's good. Everyone's doing well. Everyone's probably doing better than I am. I'm recovering from my last week, and it's going to be a day or two for me to bounce back to full Russell. So I'm super excited for this podcast, and we're going to talk this week about movies that are forgotten, or movies that aren't talked about, or at least just underrated movies. So I think there's some good ones. I at least have a few that are like, oh wow, I don't even remember that coming out, and a few interesting points about films. So if you all want to take that on, and then I'll go last, kind of, same format we always do.
Sounds good. So why don't you start, Ariana? What's your...
Sure. I have three, actually. The first one kind of relates to what we were talking about last week, which it's Camp X-Ray with Kristen Stewart.
Oh, okay.
She has won many awards for it. And I think it relates to last week because everyone associates Kristen Stewart with Twilight and saying that she's such a bad actress, but it was really just what she was given with the role. And when you watch her in Camp X-Ray, like, she's an amazing actress, so that just brought it up a whole nother level, and I think people just forget about it because of her relationship to Twilight.
Right. And what's the whole story about?
It's about like Guantanamo Bay, where Kristen Stewart's a prison guard there, and just what happens in the prison itself and her relationship to an inmate.
That sounds interesting. Wow.
It's on Netflix, I believe. That's the last time I watched it, so it's still on there. Great one. The next two are kind of movies from like my childhood. I have a Goofy movie.
Oh my gosh.
Did you guys know Goofy is a cow, not a dog?
Yeah, it was really...
What?
Yeah, Goofy's a cow.
I have a dog.
So he has his own movie.
Yeah.
He has like a couple, but like I think everybody really just forgets a Goofy movie because everybody remembers an Extraordinary Goofy movie where he goes to college with his son.
That was one of the first movies I ever like teared up in. I was like 5. I just remember the movie is so it hits hard if you're a 5-year-old. You're like, wow, like, yeah. I think that's why I'm a filmmaker now. It's a Goofy movie.
Yeah, I remember my brother and I watched it like a couple weeks ago, and we were just like, wow, we now actually remember this.
That reminds me. Sorry to interrupt. I wonder if each generation has their own Christmas type movie that they remember. Have you guys seen Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas?
No.
Okay.
No.
I guess each generation has their own Christmas. There's a bunch of puppets. It's like, Fraggle Rock. Have you heard of Fraggle Rock? It's kind of like that. Sorry, go ahead.
The last one I had was The Iron Giant.
Yes. Such a good movie.
Oh my gosh.
So underrated.
That movie made me cry.
That movie. So I have a fun fact about The Iron Giant. So after E.T. came out, there was a lot of movies about a kid finding a thing, like this outcast kid finding a thing, and then there's that like plot of basically E.T. but different thing that the kid finds. And I think Iron Giant is the best version of like an E.T.-esque film, and it's animated. I think that besides E.T., Iron Giant is the best in that subgenre of kind of science fiction, but kind of a coming-of-age story. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's severely underrated.
Oh, massively underrated. That movie is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Vinay, have you not seen Iron Giant?
No, what is that, a drama or
It's actually a cartoon. It's one of the first cartoons that used digital animation and hand-drawn stuff. It probably came in like 2001 or 2002.
99.
It was 99. So it's very good. It's like it's a cartoon that's not really meant for kids, but a lot of kids watch it because, like, your parents take you to the theater and all of that.
Right.
But it is something I genuinely recommend watching. it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So it's it's basically E.T. except instead of an alien, he befriends a robot.
Yeah, a giant robot.
A
Giant robot from outer space.
If you will.
It's very, very, very good. I think you should definitely watch it. You would really like it.
Okay, I'll check out all of these. So was it Captain X-Ray or what was it called again?
Camp X-Ray.
Camp X-Ray. Okay. Can't read my own writing. Okay. Yeah, I'll check all those out. That's great. So who's next? Max, why don't you go? You're the next square underneath the...
Yeah, I can go. So I had two movies, both of them horror. Surprise, surprise. The first one I picked I think a forgotten movie. That's the original The Fog, John Carpenter.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that movie. One thing I think he really does really well is atmosphere. That movie is full of great cinematography and great spooky settings. Mm-hmm. And then just the classic ghost story that's almost sad, and the plot is more about justice in the end. But so that was my first pick. And then my second one, another horror movie, is the remake of Friday the 13th, which I think is an underrated movie.
What year did that come out?
I think 2009.
That's so crazy. I just watched that like a few weeks ago, so it's crazy that was the one that you picked.
I think it's underrated for a couple reasons. One, it's a Michael Bay film, and he's got some stereotypes along with him that, his movies aren't always the best, and a lot of explosions, that sort of thing. But I think it follows pretty truly to the originals, and just some of the updates that he did, I really think work.
I genuinely really like that movie as well. I'm glad you brought that one up. But yeah, I think that's a good pick. That is something that people forget, where you do like those like kind of retcon sort of remake sequel-y sort of movies, and people forget about them. I think another one that it's not like that yet, but will be very soon, is Prometheus, and then Alien, not Prometheus, but the sequel to that. I don't remember
Covenant.
The name. Alien Covenant. Yeah, I think both those movies are really good. Just don't compare them to Alien. You know what I mean? Like they're good in their own universe. Just don't compare them to the other thing, because they're not as good as that. But I genuinely do like those movies, and I like the ones Max said as well. The one about the fog, there's the version that scared the hell out of my mom, apparently. So that's like my one connection to that.
The remake of The Fog is one of the few movies that I'll actually turn off because I dislike it so much.
Yeah. No, I understand. But yeah.
Good. What about you, Olivia? What are yours?
Yeah, so my first pick is Sorry to Bother You, and it's about this like black telemarketer who adopts he code switches with his voice and uses a white voice and gets really successful at his job. And then there's like a huge like corporate conspiracy that he has to like choose between joining the like fight, his activist friends that are like moving up in the industry he's in. Mm-hmm. And like you go into that movie like with that mindset, and you're like, okay, like I know what I'm gonna watch, and then it just like switches like halfway through the film into something I was not expecting, and then it just keeps going. And I don't want to spoil the ending for you guys because it's on Hulu, so you should watch it. But like, I mean, it's kind of on that vein and all that stuff, and then like I said, it just takes like a right turn into something that I was like, all right, we're here now. But yeah.
What's the name of that movie?
Sorry to Bother You. There's just like a bunch of talent in there. Laketh, stars, I can't remember them. Tessa Thompson, Terry Crews, Patton Oswalt, David Cross, Danny Glover, like they're all in it, and it's just Armie Hammer's in it. It's just a bunch of talent, like a lot of well acting, and I just feel like it's that kind of movie that they had a lot of fun with. I had fun watching it.
Yeah. I don't know why, but Patton Oswalt in that cast just like it confused me, but I know it shouldn't confuse me.
I got a lot of movies to watch now. I haven't seen any.
Yeah, and then my second film is Daughters of the Dust by Julie Dash, and that's about like 3 generations of Black women. And what's really interesting, well, this movie is like just complete poetry to begin with, and it was the first, like I think general wide release of a Black woman director, and it gets forgotten a lot because of that, but it's amazing, and actually was some of the inspiration for Beyonce's Lemonade. So I would highly recommend watching that. It's just like, I think it won best cinematography somewhere, I don't know, but it was amazing.
Who's the director on that movie?
Julie Dash.
Oh, Julie Dash. Okay. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, so I wrote down like 10, so I'm just going to pick one. I would say my number one is Twin Peaks Come Fire Walk With Me. Have you guys seen that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I'd say probably the eeriest movie I've ever seen. And when I first saw it, I think, whenever I would recognize eerie moments in movies, it was always a piece, like a 1 minute part of a Hitchcock movie or something. And the first movie I saw where like the entire movie was eerie and strange and scary in the way that is kind of terrifying. So that's kind of a go-to movie when I have spare time and I have to watch things. And the other one I wrote down was a movie called Being There. That came out in 1979 with Peter Sellers. Have you guys seen that one?
I have not. That sounds like something interesting.
Yeah. It's like Peter Sellers. He's almost like a Forrest Gump type character. He comes down and he's obviously not very bright, but people intuit brilliance from him just based on things that he does. And it's kind of a great commentary on idolatry and celebrity, and it's like that movie Network in a way, where it was like very prescient of things that would happen like 20 years later, 30 years later. Mm-hmm. So, and then if I can just sneak one more in, a movie called Happiness. Have you guys seen Happiness?
No.
The filmmaker Todd Solondz. He makes pretty strange movies. Very, all the characters are dysfunctional. It's almost like he's almost like David Mamet, but even a little sicker in a way, which if you can imagine. So anyway, those are my 3 movies.
I just looked up the last one. I'm very intrigued, especially with that David Mamet, the sicker thing.
The dialogue, when you watch Happiness or any Todd Solondz movie, just the dialogue is like, he's not going there, he's not, and he goes there every time. Like conversations you don't think you should be privy to. That's the dialogue in those movies almost, from beginning to end. And it's pretty fascinating to me. Those
very cool. I just looked up that one. I'm 100%. I think that might be the first one I look up because that sounds super interesting. I like watching something like weird, like The Lobster. Just something like way out here. And it's one of those movies you show your friends and then you're not allowed to show your friends movies anymore. So it's one of those. And I love showing people that because they're like, no, you can't do this anymore. You've ruined your chances. So I think my first one is one that maybe everyone has seen, maybe not. Mark Hamill's in it, actually. But it's called Brigsby Bear. It came out in 2016 or 2017. It's written by...
They had the guy from SNL, right?
Yeah, Kyle Mooney wrote it in high school.
Yeah.
And it's about Kyle Mooney, who's lived his entire life in a bunker in the middle of the desert. And he thinks that the world outside is poisonous. And the people he's living with, he thinks are his parents, but they've abducted him when he was a baby. And they have this TV show that's taught him everything about life called Brigsby Bear. and his dad plays the characters in it. And it's about him kind of leaving this bunker sort of accidentally and kind of getting thrown into the real world and coming to grips with the life that he thought he had versus the life that actually exists for him. And it is both like touching and really like scary, but really funny. It's just a movie that's very, I guess, realistic to how someone would act if you just told them, like Truman Show style, oh, everything you know is not real. And it's a little more realistic than Truman Show, not in so far as it's an entire like city built inside of a bubble, but it's just about one person who's kind of been part of this like micro cult. And I think it's a really good movie that has a lot of heart, and not enough people watched it. But when I first saw that, I was actually working for Hollywood Casting and Film in Los Angeles. And it was one of those things that gave me hope. Weird stuff can be made and people will see it. Right. And it just gave me that thought when I was done watching. I'm like, wow, this is something I've never seen before. And this is like a studio taking a risk on a film that means a lot to a few people. And I think it's something you don't forget after you watch it. It just sticks in your head. That's my first one. And then my second one is also a cartoon, but not meant for kids, that I saw when I was young, called Titan AE. I don't know if any of you all saw it, but Matt Damon was in it. And it was one of the first films that used a quasi-performance capture technology, because it's not digital, but it's not drawn. It's in this weird in-between, kind of like the Beowulf movie, which I was going to talk about on here, but I think that movie's a weird cult hit. And like there's a group of people who like that movie. But Titan AE is about like the world ending, and this guy gets thrown onto this spaceship, and he's like this outcast, and there's this this parasitic kind of electro alien race that is like hunting them. It's a really, really good, very dark animated film that I think everyone should watch. And movies like that in Hollywood aren't made anymore. That aren't blockbusters, but they have really big actors in them, and they're just something that's a throwaway piece. You don't need a sequel to it. It just ends. That's it. And I really, really, really liked it. And I watched that movie when I was a kid, probably 100 times. It was one of those.
Believe me if I told you I was at the premiere of that movie?
Really?
Yeah, I was working for a high-speed internet company. We were doing business with the company Cisco, and apparently Cisco offered some kind of technology that made the filming possible. So I got tickets to go to the premiere of that movie.
That was like, when I was a kid, that was like one of my favorite movies. That's incredible. That's awesome someone else knows what this is. Because I tried to talk to so many people about this movie, and they're like, what the hell are you talking about? That's incredible. That made my day. That you knew what that was. And then my last one, this is just one that's underrated, that I think everyone who's in film school, or anyone who wants to make a movie that's really good but has no budget to it should watch, is The Babadook. It's an Australian indie film that is, I think it's probably categorized as horror just because of the visuals of the film, but it's a metaphor kind of for depression and postpartum depression. And it's really interesting because it's all told through the eyes of this mother who's depressed when her husband dies, and she has this little kid, and they get delivered a book, and the book is the Babadook book, which is just an anagram for a bad book, is what that means. And it's when she reads the book, everything that happens in the book happens in real life, Jumanji style, except the thing that comes out of the book is Mr. Babadook, who is one of the most horrifying creatures in any horror movie, because there's no visual effects to it. It's just a dude in really scary makeup with really big teeth. And it's
very, very simple.
It's very simple film that was shot for, it was like, I know there was probably a budget because the studio put it behind it, but the original version of the film was made for free. Like, that's why Mr. Babadook looks that way, is because they did like a bunch of sample pieces for the film for absolutely free. And I think it's a movie that needs to be studied because it's something that when working on our films, I'll rewatch pieces of it to be like, okay, so how did they do this way, clearly without $1 trillion behind them? And how did they get really creative and use their minimal budget to their advantage? And there's a sequence at a police station in the movie that is one of the most horrifying things ever, because it's just this feeling of this woman being like, I am being followed. And the cops in Australia are like, no, you're not. That's a book. You're not being followed. And she keeps trying to get rid of it. And it keeps coming back. It's very unsettling and off-putting, more than I would say scary. What do you all think?
I think the Babadook, like, the one thing that gets me is the, like, how it's like hard because like there's that fine line between stigmatizing mental health and also kind of showing like that fear and that feeling. And I feel like they've done a really good job with it, you know, dealing with like how it feels to like have out of control mental health that you don't know like what's going on. And then I can't spoil the ending, but like that movie I think was more unsettling or scary just because in a weird sense, even though it was like fantastical and like mythological, like it was still really relatable.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I mean, maybe this says something about me as a filmmaker, or maybe it says something about the movies that I like to make. But one of my favorite films that isn't like Lord of the Rings, just one of my favorite like guilty pleasure films is Donnie Darko. And it reminds me a lot of Donnie Darko. Vinay, have you seen Donnie Darko?
I haven't. I've been meaning to for a while.
I think it's on Netflix. It is so good. Young Jake Gyllenhaal in that movie absolutely crushes it. It's about schizophrenia, or sort of. That's like the backdrop for the film is someone who has schizophrenic tendencies. And I think it is so strange and good. And it's just a movie that it's developed a weird cult following on the internet. Maybe good, maybe bad. But I think it's something as well that should be studied more when you're trying to do psychological horror. Unlike Saw, which is kind of just a gore fest. But Vinay, on the Titan AE thing, I have a question. So you were at the premiere showing for the movie Whiplash.
Yeah.
How did you get into that?
Well, there's this small group of filmmakers in LA called the Filmmakers Alliance. And it's one of maybe 20, filmmakers groups in LA where people get together and they premiere their stuff. And so we just happened to be a member of that group, and we went somewhere in Silver Lake on a Friday night to premiere, or to watch like 6 or 7 premieres of, they meet like once every 3 or 4 months, and so Whiplash was the first one. And then the second one was from a lady that wrote a movie called Girl Most Likely, I think. Have you guys seen
that?
Yes.
And so she was there, and she premiered her short film, and it was hilarious. And that was I think I'd only been in LA for like 2 weeks, and it was my first experience that like all these talented people live in this city. So it was really exciting when that happened.
That's super cool. Yeah, you mentioned that to me one time on a call, because I referenced that for what we were doing for an upcoming film that has a musical instrument sequence. And you're like, oh, yeah, I was at the premiere for that. I've never followed up on that question, but I thought that'd be fun for this podcast because from my like notes for the show, I have notes of questions to ask Vinay about things he's mentioned in passing that I'm fascinated by. So on that, I think one thing that I want to talk about before we wrap up the episode is what movie do you think that it has gotten massively popular? It could be like an older film. It could be something recent. it could be something that's just in your head that you just find like this to be way overhyped, and you're like, why? Like this,
Avatar.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so sorry.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I couldn't even let you finish. I was like, Avatar. Like, yes,
Yeah.
visually beautiful. Storyline is terrible.
That's exactly what I was going to say, too, was Avatar.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep. That's it.
So,
I have the biggest wish that Avatars 2, 3, 4, and 5 just like bankrupt James Cameron to like never make another movie again.
I don't think based off being pushed back, I don't think they're coming out anytime soon.
Also, I would say the movie Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah.
I never really got that too much. Like,
yeah, I've never gotten that. Another one, the one that I had in my head when I was like writing my notes for this was Step Brothers. I don't like that movie. I don't get why people like it. I don't. I love Judd Apatow. I love Adam McKay. No,
So funny.
it's not. It doesn't.
There's so many quotable scenes that you can say in everyday life, and people will get it.
No, I had this exact argument this last week on my vacation. I don't like that movie. And everyone's like, dude, do you not have a sense of humor? No, I do have a sense of humor. That's why I don't like that movie.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's just to smack you in the face, but that spanking scene gets me every time.
You know what? I'm leaving this podcast. I'm out. You guys can find another house. This is how it's
I have a similar movie like that too. For me, it's Napoleon Dynamite. Everybody does not like me for hating Napoleon Dynamite, but I've never found it funny.
It's that brand of humor that like is so close to being Tim and Eric. It's so close, but it's not. It's just not. It's not Lonely Island. It's not Tim and Eric. It's just it wants to be so bad. And I think that's what Step Brothers is for me as well, where I'm like, I see what you guys are doing, but it's just, that ain't it, Chief. That ain't it.
And I'm sure I'll get hate mail for this, but the movie Field of Dreams. I
don't like sports movies.
Happens, and then there's just a few ghosts in a cornfield throwing baseballs around. That's the whole movie.
Yeah. No.
I never got that one either.
It's one of those like ultimate dad movies that I'm like, I'll watch. I'm like, no, why? I just wasted 2 hours. You could have done anything else. Like, it's one of those. And then I think another movie this is our next week's topic is sports movies and why I don't like them. But the best sports movies of all time are three are Talladega Nights, Happy Gilmore, and Dodgeball are the three best sports movies of all time. And this is the thing that I die upon, is that stance.
Yeah. No Any Given Sunday?
No. Yeah, okay, that's up there. But yeah, there's a thing about sports movies. Sports movies for me are like biopics. It's the same story every time. It's, I was like down and out of my luck. I got a little famous. I did a lot of drugs. I'm in a van. Now I'm super big. Look at me.
Yeah.
You're telling me Blades of Glory isn't up there?
Okay. My mom was off camera saying the same thing. Blades of Glory is incredible, but I don't think it reaches the upper echelon of Dodgeball insofar as ESPN 8 the Ocho is now a real thing. It's created its own film, its own TV channel. It's incredible. If it's almost a sport, we got it. And it's one of those movies that I absolutely love. It is timeless. That is one of the few movies I think I know every single line of. And yeah, do you guys all like sports movies, or am I the weird one?
I love them. I'll go to a bad sports movie. I mean, over a decent drama, I'll go to a bad sports movie.
Two of my favorites are The Natural and Remember the Titans.
Remember the Titans.
So good.
I just watched it for young Ryan Gosling.
I think the worst one is that movie Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr.
Oh yeah,
has to be the worst sports movie ever made.
Oh yeah, I think
might surprise people that I thought they did a good job with, although it's clearly a corny premise, was that movie with Dennis Quaid where he's like 40 and he goes back to the major leagues.
Oh, yeah. What?
I thought they did. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, The Rookie.
Really
we have a
good.
comment. My mom just yelled it into me. It's The Rookie.
Okay.
So-
I guess I'm a sucker for a good. If Disney does a good job and they hit all the right beats, I'm a sucker for a good Disney sports movie.
Oh, tell me Mighty Ducks isn't.
I've never seen it.
Up there. Get out, Mighty Ducks.
I don't know if you would enjoy it now. I feel like that has to be like a nostalgic film.
Okay.
That's true. I can get on that. That's true.
Another good film that just makes me laugh, that it is a sports film as a backing, but it's not a sports movie, is Goon, it's a hockey movie with Sean William Scott and Liv Schreiber. It is so good. That movie is actually an incredibly good drama as well and really funny. It just has to do with hockey, which is a sport I don't understand, even though I am wearing a hockey shirt. But yeah, it's one of those things where I think they're always so hokey because you know how it's going to end. I just want to see a sports movie where you're rooting for someone and they lose. I just want to see one where they just lose.
Rocky loses.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Creed.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm giving away a bunch of movie endings.
I didn't see Creed. I know. I saw Creed 2. Does that count? This is the one spot of my film knowledge I'm bad at is sports movies. I can't.
So you say you hate them, but on top of that, saying you actually know nothing about them.
Okay.
Yes, but he can write a full paper on why dodgeball is the greatest sports movie ever.
Yeah, I can write a 40-page paper on why dodgeball is one of the greatest movies of all time, obviously. But no, it's because I've seen enough of them. Like, yeah, I know Rudy is a good movie. Remember the Titans is a good movie. Cool Runnings is a good movie. I don't know, but it's just one of those things where I think I've seen so many comedy versions like Happy Gilmore that when I watch a real one, I'm like, just give me Happy Gilmore. This is way better. Chubbs is the best coach of all time.
Okay, but have you seen Bring It On?
No.
Okay.
Missing out.
That movie, I will stand by. First off, I mean, if it were made now, I still think it would be made differently, and I do think there's still some problems with it, but For Its Time is, like, the wokest thing I think I've ever seen with, like, it, like, talks about cultural appropriation, and, like, I was not a cheerleader, but I was a dancer, but it shows dance culture in, like, the funniest way possible. Like, imagine that, but, like, kind of real. And, like, those were the people I knew in high school. Oh. And, like, I would suggest that movie, and it's really funny and actually really good.
I will, if you all are with me, I will watch sports movies. I'm not going to do it by myself. It's just not going to happen. But I will do it on other people. If you peer pressure me enough, I will do it. Vinay, what were you going to say? Have I seen?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
You're going to ask me.
I started thinking about Bring It On, and I totally lost my train of thought.
My mom just mentioned The Blind Side. I get Michael Orr. I don't like Sandra Bullock.
I thought Sandra was good in that film.
That's a really bad movie. The worst sports movie is Vision Quest with Matthew Modine. I think in like the 80s. It's a wrestling movie with like Madonna music. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is what we're going to have a whole episode about, is you guys roasting me for not liking these and me picking up my points flawlessly because I'm right. And I think, if you made a sports movie that was more realistic about someone like me who's not coordinated and not that good at sports and then does get good at a sport no one cares about, that's what we need to see. We need to see a movie about someone who was never a jock.
Yeah.
Eddie the Eagle.
If you consider I know we're running out of time, but I'll leave the podcast with a recommendation.
Okay.
If you want to call this a sports movie, it's a documentary on Netflix about the Donkey Kong Championships. Have you seen this?
I've heard of this.
The King of Kong. It's one of the best sports documentaries I've ever seen. You get a real glimpse of like the competitive video game culture. It's pretty awesome.
There was someone, actually Vinay, who helped me with my first film with you all, who is actually now in an esports league, and that's his like main career in LA. He's like in a League of Legends esports like tournament team, and like he lives in like West Hollywood in like one of those like McMansions because he plays video games. It's like ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, shout out to Chris, who I actually think listens to this. What's up, dude? But yeah, so next week I was thinking our topic might be why are video game movies always awful? Or why do I not like sports movies? And what's the deep-seated reason? But we have less than a minute left. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right. Thanks, guys. I'm going to watch Camp X-Ray tonight.
Bye.